The faucet hissed as I scrubbed the inside of my coffee mug, steam curling up and fogging my glasses. I didn't rush. The longer I stayed in the kitchen, the less I had to walk back past the living room window, where his brand new car sat in the driveway like a smug little secret. It was still goddamn gleaming, pearlescent gray, no plates yet, with that dumb dealership sticker still crooked on the back. I'd told myself I was over it, that I didn't care what Brian did with his money, but that was a lie. And the worst part wasn't the car itself, it was the cash. He bought it in cash, not a loan, not a lease, not even a hand-me-down. I'd seen the paperwork myself, because he'd left the damn thing on the kitchen counter like it was nothing. Purchase agreement, title, final amount paid. And the number hit me like someone had slammed the fridge door into my spine. 37 grand, all at once, paid off, while I'd been Venmoing him half the rent, on time, every month, for almost 2 years. The thing about small betrayals is they don't come with flashing signs or slamming doors. Sometimes they come with a shiny new Civic and a smile like nothing's wrong. Let me back up. I met Brian through mutuals after I left my last place. My ex and I had just split. It was messy, mostly emotionally, but financially too. I'd spent a couple of weeks sleeping on my cousin's pullout while panic applying for IT contracts and browsing listings I couldn't afford. Then a friend of a friend said Brian was looking for a roommate. He had a place in San Diego, 2-bedroom, mid-tier, kind of boxy but decent neighborhood. 10-minute drive from the office I'd just landed a short-term gig at. Rent was $2,100 a month total. Steep, yeah, but we'd split it right down the middle. He already had the lease. I'd just be adding on as a tenant at will. No drama, he'd said when we first met. I'm pretty chill. I work remote, mostly keep to myself. He seemed clean. The place didn't smell like mildew or weed or last week's burrito. We shook hands that night. That was November. In the beginning, it worked fine. We didn't hang out much, just the occasional sports game on in the background, passing each other in the kitchen. I paid him on the first of every month. We used Venmo. Sometimes I added a dumb emoji, like a ramen bowl or firecracker. I thought we were cool. Brian worked in finance, or something adjacent to it. He had a setup in the spare room. Dual monitors, one of those ugly black gaming chairs with the lumbar support. I never asked too many questions. He made jokes about market volatility and his crypto bag. I nodded, made my coffee, went to work. But as time went on, I started noticing things, little things, like how he stopped complaining about bills, even when utilities spiked in July, or how he casually mentioned skipping lunch because he was saving for something big, or how I'd hear him on the phone late at night using words like liquidate and portfolio shift and exit window. At first, I assumed he was broke, that maybe he'd overextended, had some debts. I even worried a little, thought about offering to cover utilities one month, but he always seemed calm, too calm. Then came the Friday in August. I'd gotten home early, dead from a week of back-to-back tickets at work, and as I turned into the driveway, there it was. The car. Parked clean, not a scratch on it, windows slightly tinted, and Brian standing next to it like a kid with a new toy. "Dude," he grinned. "Check it out." I tried to smile. "Looks nice." "Yeah, dealership just dropped it off. Paid in full, man. She's mine." That was the first gut punch. The first little crack in whatever illusion I'd built around us being equals in this setup. I'd been grinding through freelance contracts, rationing takeout, skipping weekends out, and this guy had just dropped nearly 40 grand on a whim? I thought, okay, maybe he came into some money. Maybe he saved aggressively. Maybe it's none of my business. But then I saw the paperwork. I hadn't meant to. I was looking for a pen, and he'd left the car folder half open on the counter. Insurance forms, purchase invoice, and a handwritten budget sheet. His. Dated back to when we'd first moved in together. In bold at the top, rent covered by R until Q4 2023. I froze. R was me. Richard. Covered. The budget sheet mapped out every month, down to the cent. His savings, his spending. A timeline for hitting his car goal. And right there, in his own handwriting, was the unspoken deal I'd never agreed to. Let Richard pay half. I pay nothing. Pocket the difference. Save up for the car. I stared at it for so long my hand went numb holding the capless pen. I didn't say anything that night, not even when he got Chipotle for both of us and asked if I wanted to split a movie rental. I just nodded, and for a while after that, I pretended nothing had changed. That was the hardest part, knowing I was paying for someone else's dream without even being asked. For the next 2 weeks, I walked around the apartment like I was in a soundproof box. Everything felt quiet and padded and slow. I still paid rent on the first of the month. Automated Venmo transfer, just like always. But my fingers hovered a second longer before tapping send. I still brewed my coffee, still rinsed out my cereal bowl, still nodded when Brian asked about my day. But I wasn't in the same space anymore. Not really. Because now I knew that while I was counting down grocery receipts and stretching a half tank of gas for an extra week, he'd been quietly stacking cash. Not because he was broke, not because he needed help, but because he'd planned for me to carry the load. And I had. 2 full years, 24 rent payments at $1,050 each, 25 grand, give or take. Enough for a decent car, enough for his car. The first time, I almost said something was a Tuesday. I remember because it was the day the fridge made that weird humming sound again, the one I'd emailed the landlord about twice. Brian was at the kitchen table, typing with his usual headphones on. His fancy new key fob sat beside his coffee, next to the napkin I'd used. It was an accident, but I grabbed the napkin and almost knocked the keys off the table. He reached out just in time and smiled. "Careful," he said. "Still got that new car smell." I stared at him for a beat too long. "You know," I said, "I used to think I was a good roommate." He blinked, smile dimming a notch. "You are? Why?" I shrugged and walked away. That night I lay awake longer than usual, not because of noise, just thinking, running numbers in my head, noticing every time he took long showers or left lights on or cranked the heat without asking. I started keeping mental notes, stupid stuff, petty stuff, but it didn't feel petty. It felt like proof that I wasn't crazy. Then came the real kicker. I was cleaning the shared bathroom, again, something I did way more than him, and noticed a thick envelope in the cabinet behind the toilet paper. I don't even know why I opened it. Some part of me just needed to see. Inside were bank withdrawal slips from the last 6 months, all cash, all amounts between $2,000 and $4,500, the same account name, the same handwriting, Brian's. I sat down on the edge of the tub and laughed once, just a sharp breath out my nose. He'd been withdrawing the cash in chunks, planning it out. Probably so it wouldn't flag the bank, keeping it hidden in the apartment, waiting for the car deal. I didn't take anything. I didn't even move the envelope. I just put it back, slowly, carefully, closed the cabinet, washed my hands like I'd touched something toxic. That night I didn't sleep at all. Because the way I saw it, I had 2 choices. Option 1, say something. Confront him. Demand what? Back pay? An apology? Option 2, leave. But both of those felt too easy, too quick. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. Not really. It wasn't about the money anymore. Not just the money. It was about the lie under everything. The casualness of it. The way he let me believe we were splitting rent month after month while he used that lie to stack his dream. That kind of betrayal doesn't get fixed with a check. So I waited until something changed. It did, 2 Fridays later. Brian got a promotion, or maybe a better title at the same job. I never fully understood what he did, and he decided to celebrate. "Hey," he said, leaning into my doorway. "A few people are coming by tomorrow night. Nothing big, just drinks. You in?" I turned from my monitor. "Sure, congrats." "Thanks, man. Should be chill." It wasn't chill. It was a full house, probably 15 people packed into the living room, laughing and holding drinks, the music bouncing off the too-thin drywall. I kept to the kitchen for the most part, sipping a beer and pretending to check something on my phone. At one point, a girl in a denim jacket asked if I was Brian's roommate. "Yup," I said. She grinned. "Dude's killing it. Did he really pay for that car in cash?" I took a slow sip. "Yup." "That's wild," she said. "He said his rent's like nothing, too. Smart guy." I think I smiled, or maybe I didn't. I honestly can't remember. But that was the moment something settled in me. Not anger, not even sadness, just certainty. After everyone left, after the front door clicked shut and Brian started rinsing glasses in the sink, I walked in and stood there. He looked up. "Fun night, huh?" I nodded. "Yeah, hey, can we talk tomorrow?" He frowned. "Everything okay?" "Just some stuff about the apartment, no big deal." He shrugged. "Sure, man." I went to bed, woke up early, printed everything. I mean everything. Every Venmo payment, bank transfers, utility splits, lease documents, emails to the landlord, even the photos I'd quietly taken of the envelope in the bathroom and his budget sheet on the counter. I printed it all, stapled it into a thick stack. Then I placed it neatly on the kitchen table. Next to it, I left a yellow post-it that said, "Read this before you say anything." I didn't go back to sleep. I went out, grabbed a coffee, sat in my car, waited. And when I finally walked back in around 10, he was still sitting there, stack in hand, face unreadable. He didn't look up when I closed the door behind me, just sat there in his faded hoodie, one hand on the edge of the paper stack like it might slide off the table if he let go. I set my keys down and waited. He finally blinked. "You kept all this?" I nodded. "Yeah." Brian ran a hand over his mouth, slow and dry, the way people do when they're trying to buy time. His knee bounced under the table. The guy who always had a comeback, who once argued with our internet provider for 37 straight minutes, suddenly couldn't find the next word. "Soliang," he said eventually, "what do you want from me?" That question. Not an apology, not an explanation, just a negotiation. It hit me harder than I expected. I sat down across from him. Not angry, just clear. "I want you to say it." He frowned. "Say what?" "That you lied. That you let me cover your rent so you could save up for that car. That you planned it." He didn't say anything. "You wrote it down," I added, tapping the stack. "Your handwriting. I didn't imagine it." Brian leaned back. "Man, it's not like that." "Then tell me how it is." "It's just, when you moved in, things were tight, okay? I figured I'd catch up eventually. I wasn't trying to screw you over." "You never paid a cent toward rent," I said. "Not once in 2 years. You let me think we were splitting." He rubbed his face again. "Dude, we split the internet, the utilities." "I wasn't your landlord, Brian. I was your roommate. You didn't even tell me. You just let it happen." Silence stretched between us, long and taut. "I didn't think it mattered," he said finally, quieter. "That's the problem," I said. "It did. It does." He didn't argue after that, just stared down at the table like he was trying to solve a math problem he'd already failed. I stood up. "I'm not asking for the money." He looked up, surprised. I shook my head. Not yet. What does that mean? It means I haven't decided what I want yet, but I'm not staying here. Brian blinked. You're moving out? I've already started looking, I said. You'll get a 30-day notice in writing. I'm not going to ghost you. He nodded slowly, like he was still calculating how bad this was going to get. And honestly, I didn't know either. But I knew I couldn't keep waking up in a house that felt like a lie. The next week was weird, awkward, mostly silent. He tried to be extra polite, doing dishes, wiping counters, even asking if I wanted any takeout the night he ordered Thai. I said no. We stayed in our corners. The tension settled like dust, thick but unspoken. I found a one-bedroom studio 10 blocks away, smaller, older, but affordable. I signed the lease, gave him the formal notice, and started packing. And that's when things shifted again, because 2 days later, I got an email from our landlord. Subject line, tenant transition. The body of the message was short and weirdly formal. He thanked me for my timely payments and said he was aware of the arrangement between you and Brian regarding rent. He wished me well in my new place. I read the email twice, then a third time, and then I called the number at the bottom. Hey, I said, when the landlord picked up, can I ask what you meant by that email? He paused. Just wanted to thank you, really. Brian said you'd been covering rent for both of you while he was between jobs, that you'd agreed to help him out. I closed my eyes. He told you that? Yeah, months ago. Said you two had an understanding. Did he ever pay you? Not since you moved in. But, he always said you were handling it, that it was covered. I swallowed hard. Okay, I said. Thanks. I hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, hands in my lap, phone screen still glowing on the table. So it wasn't just me he lied to. He lied to the landlord too, kept the whole arrangement under wraps, made himself sound like the one in need, and I was the mark. It didn't matter that I'd already planned to move out. This felt different now. This felt like theft. That night, I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd made. Every Venmo transaction, labeled and dated, bank statements to match, emails confirming my payment history, notes on the cash envelope, photos of his budget sheet. I turned it into a clean, organized PDF. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sent an email to a lawyer. Nothing dramatic, just a free consultation link a friend had sent me months ago, back when I was helping him with a lease dispute. I attached the PDF, wrote a short explanation, didn't expect much, but the next morning, I got a reply, and it said, "You may have grounds to recover back rent. Let's talk." We met at a cafe near the lawyer's office, not some high-rise downtown, just a converted Craftsman off El Cajon Boulevard with a front porch and too many wind chimes. The attorney's name was Rachel Park. Mid-30s, glasses, clipped tone, but not cold. She didn't waste time. I read everything, she said, flipping open a manila folder. If what you've documented is accurate, you covered over $25,000 in rent, under the false assumption that it was being split. I nodded. That's right. Did he ever make explicit claims about paying his half? I hesitated. Not in writing, but it was always understood. He never once said I was covering for him. She scribbled something. We might not need an explicit statement. Implied agreement counts for a lot when it comes to cohabitation and shared expenses, especially if there's a clear pattern of deception. She tapped the stack. The budget sheet you photographed, if he wrote that before you moved in, it shows intent. That matters. So what's the play here? You have a few options, she said. We can send a formal demand letter, outline the payments, the discrepancy, and give him a chance to settle. If he refuses, you can sue in small claims for up to 10 grand. Beyond that, it goes to civil court. I leaned back. I don't want a war. I want him to know he doesn't get away with it. Rachel closed the folder. Then let's start with the letter. The envelope arrived at the apartment 4 days later. I wasn't there when he opened it, but I imagined it, him standing at the kitchen table again, but this time the paper in his hands had teeth. He waited until the next morning to text me. "Brian, can we talk?" I didn't answer. He texted again 2 hours later. "Brian, this is over the top. You could have just said something." I stared at the message for a long time before typing a reply. Me. "I did say something. You asked what I wanted. This is it." No reply. That evening, I walked in to grab a few things from the kitchen and found him sitting at the table again. Same hoodie, same anxious knee bounce. "You're really doing this?" he asked. "I already did." He looked at me like he wanted to say something smart, something to cut me down or turn it around, but he didn't. He just nodded, once, slow. "I don't have that kind of money." "You should have thought about that before you bought the car." His jaw flexed. "I didn't steal from you. You lied to me for 2 years. He stood up, took a step forward, then stopped. "So what? You want me to sell the car? Hand you a check and call it even? I want you to take responsibility. That's it." He laughed once, dry. "You always acted so chill, man, like you didn't care about money." "I didn't," I said, "until I realized you did." 2 weeks passed. I moved into my new place. The studio was small, sunlit in the mornings, and quiet in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I unpacked slowly, no rush. Then one afternoon Rachel called. "He responded," she said, "through an attorney. They're offering a partial settlement, $8,000, on the condition that you sign a non-disparagement clause." I blinked. "He wants me to keep quiet?" "It's common. He's nervous this might impact his employment or social circle, especially if word gets out." I looked around my studio, a dish rack drying beside the sink, my sneakers by the door, my own name on the mailbox again, and then I said, "No deal." Rachel paused. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, we're going to court." Small claims was less dramatic than people think. No jury, no yelling, just a cramped room with beige walls, a tired judge, and folding chairs that squeaked if you leaned wrong. Brian showed up in a suit that didn't quite fit. I brought a folder, copies of everything. Rachel sat beside me, even though she didn't have to. Said she wanted to see it through. The judge asked questions. We answered. Brian tried to argue that the rent was a gift, that I'd offered to cover him during a tough time, but the judge looked through the timeline, the budget notes, the photos of the bank slips. "You documented all of this in real time?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. She turned to Brian. "Why did you never contribute to rent during this period?" He stammered something about uncertainty and job flux. She nodded, then scribbled for a full minute. "I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. Full amount, $25,200. Brian didn't look at me. He just nodded once, tight. Case closed. The check arrived 6 weeks later. Certified mail. His handwriting on the envelope. I opened it slowly. Crisp paper, bank logo, my name. I didn't smile. I didn't frame it. I deposited it the next morning, bought myself a decent mattress for the new place, and donated a chunk to a local housing nonprofit. Then I blocked his number. I didn't expect to feel anything when the case closed. Not relief, not victory. I thought maybe I'd just move on and forget about Brian, the rent, the car, the 2 years that suddenly looked very different under a sharper light. But I did feel something. It wasn't pride exactly. It was something quieter than that. I felt clean. I hadn't realized how much of my energy had gone into pretending it hadn't bothered me. The casual lies. The slow buildup of imbalance. The little smiles he gave when I joked about being broke, and he never corrected me. I'd been gaslighting myself, telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that maybe I was overthinking, that fairness wasn't worth fighting over. And then I fought, and it was worth it. A month after the check cleared, I ran into someone who used to know both of us, an old mutual from trivia nights, back when we still had inside jokes and leftover pizza in the fridge. She asked how things were going. "Oh," she said, stirring her drink. "I heard you two had a falling out?" I shrugged. "You could call it that." "Brian's been different lately," she added. "Like he's trying too hard. Always has to bring up the car. Like he needs people to be impressed." I nodded. Didn't say much. Because I'd realized something else, too. The people who need to be seen as winning usually don't care who pays the cost. The last time I ever heard from Brian directly was an email. No subject line, just a few short sentences. "I didn't think you'd take it that far." "Guess I underestimated you. Hope the money makes it feel better." I deleted it. I didn't need a final word. Instead, I made myself dinner that night in my new place. Real dinner, not ramen or frozen Trader Joe's stir-fry. I lit a candle, ate on a real plate. Let the silence stretch, because I didn't owe anyone anything. And no one was eating off my dime. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.